Hello and welcome. This is 10 a.m. to the point editorial discussion by Neva Yes. In this video, we are going to comprehensively analyze the editorial pages of the Hindu newspaper. Now, have a look at the editorial page of the Hindu today. We have two articles for detailed discussion today. One is on the science administration in India. It deals with the new allocation of the portfolios. The second article is on coalition politics and governance. So it is a question in the governance part as well as the polity part. The other articles are political in nature. We don't have much of a takeaway, but we'll have a quick look, a quick overview of all the articles. Then we'll move towards the specific and detailed discussion of the exam relevant articles. Now look at the first article. This article deals with the new government in Odisha. So you know Naveen Patnaik is the second longest serving chief minister in India ever, just after Pawan Kumar Chamling of Sikkim. So he has entered his 24-year tenure and a new chief minister has taken charge. The name of the new chief minister is Mohan Charan Manji. He belongs to the Santali tribe. So this tribe is the same tribe of President Draupadi Murmu. So it can be a lead for a prelims question to you in that sense. Now, when we look at the legacy of Naveen Patnaik, he is credited for bringing communal harmony into the state of Odisha because the state was known for recurrent communal riots. So, in the long tenure of Naveen Patnaik, the number of riots have come down. But one of the biggest problems that is accused against Naveen Patnaik is the over dependence on bureaucracy. So, this can act as an example for you if you want for the ethics paper in the civil services section, because there was a heavy reliance on an IAS officer from Tamil Nadu cadre named V.K. Pandian by the chief minister, and in fact the campaign of the BJP which formed the government now was directed against this particular IAS officer and his regional roots. So it's an interesting case study. Now when we look at the statistics of Odisha, it says that 11.07% of Odisha's population belong to the multi-dimensional poverty index in 2023 standards. So that means Odisha is one of the poorest states in the country. So the uphill task for the new chief minister is to curtail this amount of poverty in the state. So that's the takeaway from this particular article. I think you got a quick overview of it. Now let's move to the second article. Now this article is written by Ashok Lavasa. Ashok Lavasa is a former chief election commissioner, and in this article he analyzes the speech of RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat in relation to the conduct of the Election Commission of India. So in fact he says that the speech of the RSS chief acts as a model code of conduct for the elected government. In fact, something like a model code of conduct is a product of the Election Commission of India, but he says the Election Commission was muted and manicured in the previous elections, and the RSS chief was loud and clear with his message in contrast to the Election Commission of India. The article goes on like that, and one of the quote that he comes up in the end is that it will always be the responsibility of those in majority to alleviate the apprehensions of those in minority. The reason why I took this quote is because a similar quote on the same line was discussed in the NCERT textbooks. The quote was made from the Constituent Assembly of India. It says that every safeguard that is given to the minorities in a state like India, which has a huge majority, is to relieve the minority from their apprehensions and fear. So the speech of the RSS chief is interpreted in that light by former Chief Election Commissioner Ashok Lavasa in this article. So that's the overview of it. Now moving to the third article. This article is written by renowned historian Harbans Mukhia. So in this article, the historian criticizes the current BJP government in a very stringent fashion. In fact, he says that there is a dysfunctional link between electoral politics and the invocation of Lord Ram. He substantiates this argument by citing the election results of Uttar Pradesh post the 1992 Babri Masjid demolition and the installation of Ram Lalla in 2024. The historian says that after the demolition of Babri Masjid in 1992, the BJP government lost in UP and they had to wait for 10 years to form a government there. And that too because of the infighting between the ruling coalition of the then government. In 2024, likewise, despite installing the Ram idol in the new temple, the BJP couldn't win Uttar Pradesh in 2024 general elections. So that's the argument that historian Harbans Mukhia makes in this article. And he gives an interesting insight that can be used for the society paper in the context of communalism. He says that in the midst of considerable bloodshed on the battlefields between political and denominational factions extending over 5.5 centuries. So he refers to the 5.5 century post the Islamic invasions in India in 11th century. So you know, with the coming of Muhammad Ghori, Muhammad Ghazni, then the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, which was carried through Iltutmish, the Tughlaqs, the Lodhis, the Sayyids, then the Mughals. He says that throughout this period, there were no communal riots between the common people. So there were clashes between the ruling elites, but clashes, something like a communal riot between the common people, was recorded for the first time in 1714, which was 7 years after the death of Aurangzeb. So he says that the social fabric led by the common people is always in search of social peace and not in search of communal disharmony. It is the political elite that looks for communal tensions and not the common masses. So that's the argument that the historian makes in this article. That's the quick overview. Now let's move to the fourth article. It deals with it is not really a analysis. So it deals with the retirement of Sunil CHHETRI, you know, the former captain of Indian football team. He retired, and the journalist here analyzes the relation that Sunil CHHETRI had with the fans as well as the press. So she invokes the example of Naomi Osaka, former tennis player, the current tennis player. So she took a break from tennis career as well as press conferences, citing mental health issues. So Sunil CHHETRI stands in contrast to this because he was very friendly to the press and he saw it as the democratic space where he can efficiently communicate with specific examples to the press and people. So it's a very interesting read, just an informal read. So that's it from the article. We don't have much of a takeaway from the exam perspective. Now coming to the detailed articles. Now we have two of them, as I've mentioned before. The first article deals with scientific research in India. As I said, it is relevant for you from the GS3 paper with respect to science administration. It will also give you some conceptual clarity with regard to the priorities of various ministries for the prelims paper as well. So first, let's look at the priorities of different ministries in the scientific field in the upcoming years. When we take the Department of Science, the first and foremost priority in the current regime or the current time period is space privatization. So in the recent newspaper, we have seen the coming of private agencies like Skyroot Space Agency, the launching of Vikram rocket, all these things. So space privatization is a major concern for India in this coming years, especially under the Department of Space. And India is also set to launch the maiden human flight mission. So that is also a major concern for the Department of Space in the coming years. When we look at the Ministry of Earth Sciences, the first and major priority is the exploration of polymetallic nodules. So these things are explored from the seabed, and this is going to be a game changer in the years to come in the mineral industry. So that's the major concern for Ministry of Earth Sciences. They also have to build climate resilience in the meanwhile, because mining and major emitting sectors are part of this ministry. When we look at the Department of Atomic Energy, they are looking to launch the phase 2 of the nuclear program. So we study about the phase 1 of the nuclear program, which is the pressurized heavy water reactor, then the thorium based reactors. Now the phase 2 is set to be launched, and they have to play a key role in the energy transition, because nuclear energy is considered as clean fuel because the emissions are less compared to thermal power plants. So they have to focus on energy transition as well. Finally, when we look at the Department of Science and Technology, the priorities in the coming years are artificial intelligence, quantum computers, and advanced energy solutions. So we talk about batteries where energy is stored, which is a driving factor for electric mobility and clean energy transition, and that will be a major priority for the Department of Science and Technology in the coming years. Now, the important part in this editorial is the issues with respect to these priorities, and that is what we are going to discuss now. The first and major issue, which is the heading of this article as well, is the single focus of a minister in these extremely laborious departments. Because there is just one minister of state with independent charge for these 4 important departments that we have just mentioned, and that is going to overburden the ministry. That is the first major concern. Second, the investment in research and development as a percentage of GDP has been on the decline since 2008-9. So our investment in R&D compared to countries like China or Germany or the United States is very low. It is under 1% of the GDP, but interestingly, it has been on a decline since 2008-9. The third point, there is a lack of efficient grants and fellowships for young researchers. So India is on the verge of demographic dividend now, and we have to tap the human resource potential in the science and technology field through research grants and fellowships, which is not working efficiently at present. Next, the facilities that can support interdisciplinary research are largely localized. So interdisciplinary research has to be centralized and has to be large scale to come up with great outputs. Now what we have is a largely localized setup. The next point is on translational research, which is bare and restricted to some sectors alone. Now what is translational research? Translational research means it has nothing to do with translation of languages. It means to translate or move basic science discoveries more quickly and efficiently into practice. That means to translate basic science discoveries for human well-being or day-to-day practical application. That's translational research. And the condition of translational research in India is bare and restricted to some sectors alone. Finally, the intellectual property rights protection in India is less than all right. Because IPR is very important. Whenever someone comes up with a patent or a copyright in this particular field, it has to be protected well. If the regime is not sound, if it is not in sync with the international global order, then it will be a problem for the entire sector. And that is yet another problem with regard to the scientific research in India. These issues can be taken up for any answer on the mains in this field. We have a previous year question on the same lines here. That's the takeaway from this article. Let's move to the next article, which is on coalition and governance. So we know that a coalition government has come into power right now, and it is often assumed that a coalition government means instability. We'll go into the depth of it. We'll analyze how governance is being affected by coalition governments. And first, let's start with the basic assumption of single party governments being good. It is often assumed that single party governments are good. Why are they considered to be good? The reason is single party governments are the natural order. So these reasons are assumptions. In fact, we assume that single party governments are the natural order of things and multi-party governments are aberration. In fact, in the constitution or nowhere, it is given that the government has to be single party in nature and multi-party governments shouldn't be appreciated, but we have a natural perception that single party governments are the natural order and multi-party governments are an aberration. We also think that single party governments behaves as a unitary actor. So even when they have 270 plus MPs in a single party, we believe that, or we assume that, this party acts as a unitary actor without much of a compromise or deliberation within. We also think that single party governments have the teeth to bring economic reforms that stimulate growth. So you might have seen the shooting up of the stock market when the exit polls were announced, which predicted that the BJP is getting 400 plus seats. The BJP led coalition is getting 400 plus seats. And when they got 240 seats, the stock markets crashed. So the market behaves with this assumption that single party governments have the teeth to bring reforms and can stimulate growth. But what is the reality? And that is what we are going to discuss as the core of this article. The reality says that compromises takes place everywhere. In multi-party governments, much of the compromise takes place in public. So in a way, they are more transparent. So it is basic common sense that whenever there are more than 270 MPs in a single system, there should be compromises on the basis of various lines. But when it is a coalition government, this compromises becomes transparent. It becomes a part of media discussions. It becomes a part of public domain discussions. So it becomes more transparent. So the authors say that this transparency is actually beneficial for the democratic society. The second argument against economic growth theory is that it is the minority government led by Narasimha Rao that brought economic reforms in India, which was later accelerated by the UPA coalition of 2004 and 2009. India witnessed its highest growth rate during this time, 2008-9 period. So that time there was no single party governance in India, but still economic reforms were on the higher side of it, and it was resulting in growth as well. So this counters this particular argument. Now, third reason, negotiations means that there is less radical change and there is more political stability that facilitates investment in the long term. So what do the market need at the end of it? What they need is policy stability. They expect policy stability when there is a single party at the power. But in fact, when there are coalition governments, there will be more and more negotiations. When there are negotiations, there will be less proximity for radical change. That means there is more policy stability, which will in turn favor the market and investments. So these assumptions are wrong in reality, says the authors. The next point is that there are fewer checks and balances under a single party majority, which is common sense. One example that the article gives is the farm laws, which had to be taken back because there was no consensus among all the parties. Some of the MPs were suspended when these bills were passed, and in fact it has to face a huge resentment on the streets. So in a multi-party government or in a coalition, there will be more consensus building process, and such resentment can be avoided. Finally, center-state relations are more activated in coalition governments. The reason being the coalition party partners are often regional parties. If you take the 2004-2009 coalition of the UPA, the regional parties from Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh were part of the coalition. Or if you take the current regime, the TDP from Telugu Desam, TDP, the Telugu Desam party, is a regional party based in Andhra Pradesh. Or the Nitish Kumar's party, JDU, is a party based in Bihar. So it actually works in favor of the idea of cooperative federalism in practice. So this particular article bunks a lot of myths and assumptions with respect to single party governance. It gives you certain insights for an answer on coalition politics. That's the takeaway from today's Hindu editorial. We'll wrap up the discussion with one of the pictures that was given in the editorial page. It is a picture from the terrorist attack on pilgrims. This was the bus in which they traveled. 9 people were killed in that attack on Raisi district in Jammu Kashmir. So we'll conclude the discussion of Hindu editorial with this. These are the takeaways for you. I hope it was beneficial. Thank you for listening.